Do you find it hard to explain to friends and family what you now do? Are you wasting valuable time by attempting to figure out challenges on your own? We have created a community for ex-corporate people running their own business who want to live a life they love whilst giving back to their community. This is the Build, Live, Give show. We bring you first-hand experiences of guests going through many of the struggles you face each and every day. We get real with no corporate BS. And now your host, Paul Higgins.
Welcome to the Build, Live, Give show, episode number 25. I'm Paul Higgins and I'm your show host. And today I'm very excited to have Valerie Khoo from the Australian Writers Centre. Valerie wanted to be a writer from the get-go, but she didn't think there was going to be a living in it. So she actually started her life as an accountant. And she, had some great experiences as an accountant, and she still draws on those today, but it wasn't her calling. So finally she took the step, created her own centre, and she's worked herself to the bone to actually create that and build that. And she reflects on just how hard she worked and how she would have done things a little differently if she had a time again. And she gives some great insight into that and gives some great advice for you. She's a very passionate person. She talks about one of her new passions, which is very interesting, and she just gives loads of value and is absolute joy to listen to. So please grab your pens and paper at the ready to listen to Valerie. What's been happening in the community, it continues to grow. So you can check out more at buildlivegive.com, and also you can check out to join our free Facebook group. It's a closed group, but it's the Build, Live, Give group. And it's really for ex-corporate career people that are building a great business, living a great life, and giving back to the community. And if you love this podcast or others that you've listened to, please subscribe and please continue to bring on those 5-star reviews. We're loving those reviews. It'll just really help the community grow so that we can benefit people like us that have left corporate and are now running our own business. So I will now hand you over to Valerie Khoo. But before we dive into today's show, leaving corporate to run your own business can be extremely hard and lonely. You start off in a euphoric state, and at some point you look at your cash flow and start to doubt your abilities. What you learn in corporate doesn't always translate, and you are bombarded every day with new challenges. Learning something yourself is okay, but it can be both timely and costly. Friends and family want to help, but they don't have the specific experiences you need. This is why we created the Build, Live, Give community, a free community with hundreds of people just like you, answering questions and sharing real experiences, and definitely no spam. This, coupled with weekly interviews on hot topics, will help you expedite success. Search for the Build, Live, Give group in Facebook and answer the 3 questions to gain access. Anyway, enough from me. Now it's time to hand you over to one of the BLG members to hear their wonderful journey. Welcome, Valerie Khoo from the Australian Writers Centre to the Build, Live, Give show. We're going to get to know a lot about you today, Valerie, but why don't we start with a bit of your backstory?
Sure. Well, I am the CEO of the Australian Writers Centre, and I am a writer myself. So I write books, but I also write magazine articles and blogs and all sorts of different types of writing. But my backstory is very, very different to the world of writing. I actually started my life off as an accountant. So I was immersed in the world of numbers and spreadsheets and P&Ls and auditing. And then I realized that I really wanted to do something a little bit more creative. And in fact, when I was at school, I had always been interested in writing and English and literature. And for some reason, instead of pursuing a career down that path, I became an accountant. So I decided I needed to heed that calling or scratch that itch, and then started to slowly transition careers and slowly move out of the world of accounting and into, initially, I kind of went a roundabout way. I went into PR first, so public relations, and then into journalism and writing. And I've been writing for, decades now, but that's not where I started, yes.
Excellent. And for the BLG listeners, what's a little bit that maybe a family or a friend would know about Valerie that the BLG community wouldn't?
Oh, goodness. That has to do with work or to do with anything?
No, anything. Probably outside of work would be great.
Outside of work. Okay. Well, Very recently, only in the last sort of few months, I have become obsessed. Are you ready for this?
Yes.
I've become obsessed with rope. Rope as in ROPE, the stuff you tie things with. And I have been making things with rope. So I have been exploring my creativity by weaving, by macrame, by basically creating many, many pieces of art with all different types of rope, ranging from, 2 millimeter rope to big chunky marine rope that you use on boats. I'm now an expert on rope, and not that many people, because it's been a new thing, know that about me, because it's quite different to writing. It's quite different to accounting, but it's my new obsession.
Well, and how did you come across this?
I just stumbled upon it, to be honest. I discovered a local artist, and he wasn't into rope, he was into paper. But as a result of more discussions with him, I became far more interested in art, as in creating my own art. And I tried lots of different things. So I did lots of different workshops. I did calligraphy workshops, I did crochet workshops, I did painting workshops. And then at some point I stumbled upon weaving and rope, and it was like I had found my home. I became addicted instantly. I've spent a lot of money on lots of materials and a lot of teachers, and it's just something that obviously just immediately connected with me. And now my neighbours are used to big delivery trucks coming by every few days, dropping off bulk deliveries of rope.
Fantastic. Well, I got to say, you're the first person that has had a passion like that.
There you go.
But it's great. Who knows where your passions come from? But it's fantastic to hear you so excited about that. And there will be a public showing, or is there, on Facebook, or where will some of these great pieces of art present?
Well, I'm only quite new to it, of course, but occasionally I'll just post things on Instagram or whatever. And the bizarre thing about it is, because I literally would do it 6 to 8 hours a day. I'm that obsessed, except when I run out of rope and then I have to go to bed. But I think people have recognized that, and then have recognized that I'm taking it very seriously. I'm actually studying it. That I mentioned, that I was heading to Melbourne the other day, and somebody contacted me and said, "Will you run a workshop there?" And I thought that was quite hilarious, because, I still think I'm quite new at it, but, I have studied it quite a lot in a short, intense period though. So we're just going to have a bit of fun. I'm going to run a workshop there. And then I mentioned it to someone in Sydney, and someone else in Sydney heard about it and contacted me and said, "Oh, we heard you're running a workshop in Melbourne. Will you run one in Sydney?" So it's quite strange how these things develop when you are passionate about something, whether that's a hobby or your business or a cause or whatever. I think people see that passion and they recognize that, you're going to bring something to that passion or whatever, that's beyond just, a cursory interest. And people seem to have connected with the fact that I have a passion for it and want to know more.
Brilliant. Well, that's fantastic, and thanks for sharing. And if you just sort of, I know it was a while ago since you made that great transition from an accountant into what you do today, but was there anything sort of holding you back, or anything that you can think of that was holding you back from making that initial transition?
I think the question is more, why didn't I just go to it in the first place, since that is clearly what I was interested in, at school. And I think that it was because I was under the wrong impression about the world of writing, in that I thought that writers were poor, and I didn't want to be poor. You always hear the story of the starving artist in a garret, and a writer writing into the wee hours of the night and not earning a lot of money. And in fact, a lot of writers still get that impression, and a lot of industry and arts bodies give that impression by always bemoaning that, artists or writers don't earn a lot. And that's the impression I got. And I didn't want to be poor. So that's probably why I didn't go into it in the first place. I didn't realize till much later in life that that was just a myth. and that you don't have to be poor at all, and that you can be businesslike about it, that you can scale it, and that you can have a very lucrative and healthy income from being a writer or whatever kind of creative artist. But back then I was a lot younger and much more impressionable. And I just thought, well, but I want to have a house one day, so I need money. And that's why I didn't become a writer to start off with, until it came a time that that creative pull or that urge was too strong, that I was ready to be poor in order for me to change careers. But fortunately, I soon realized I didn't have to be poor. That was just, I just got all wrong. I just needed to put the right things in place so that I could be financially secure.
Fantastic. And look, I'm sure you've got lots of help in building, what is a wonderful company that you've got today. But sort of touch on a couple of the key people that really, or key people or key groups that may have helped you build the Australian Writers Centre.
So the Australian Writers Centre has been going for 11 years. And to be honest, and hopefully this is a lesson for other people as well, but the first sort of half of the journey, it did grow and it did expand, which was great. And that was literally through sheer hard work. For some reason, even though I understood that mentors were important and business coaches were useful and that sort of thing, and masterminds, I never really participated in them. I just grew it through sheer hard work. I would literally work, 20 hours a day, which of course is not sustainable. And eventually I became exposed to things like mentors and business coaches and like-minded people and masterminds and communities. And yes, if there was one thing I would have done different, is I would have sought those people out or those groups out much earlier in my entrepreneurial journey. And now I think they're wonderful and invaluable. Absolutely. And I highly recommend that if people are starting out on their own business, they get those things very early, because they can be very helpful. So yeah, in the first part of the journey, it was actually not that many people being helpful because I didn't seek them out. That only came later. Yeah.
Great. Yeah, look, I think that's great advice. And I must admit myself, I always had a coach, but I didn't find that peer group. And in a way, that's why I've created BLG, in a way of giving back for those that are about to either in corporate thinking of leaving or have just made that move. So the next section we're going to go into is the build section. So when you walk into an event or walk into a party and someone says, Valerie, what do you do? How do you answer that?
Well, it actually depends on the party and it depends on the group of people, because you need to kind of respond in a way that's going to be interesting to those sorts of people. In some cases, you might say you're a business owner. In some cases, I might say I'm a writer and freelance journalist. Or in some cases, I might say I'm an author. And I guess more recently, now that I'm discovering the world of art and going to creative events, I might say that I'm studying to be an artist. So it really depends, to be honest, on the actual event and the people who are there. But generally speaking, if I'm representing the Australian Writers Centre, then I say that I'm CEO of the Australian Writers Centre and that we help people get published and write with confidence.
Excellent. As I expect of someone in your role, very succinct and clear. And in the way that you make revenue, how do you sort of generate revenue in that business?
So the vast majority is through selling online courses and classroom courses as well, but they're all courses that are related to helping people with their writing. And that could be anything from writing a novel or writing a business book or travel writing or getting started with a freelance writing career or writing for the web. So anything to do with writing, we're pretty much, experts in providing the right courses for people on that area of writing.
Great. And what do you see as some of the key reasons why people take so long to get that book out? What's the saying that everyone's got a book in them, but it rarely gets out? So what have you seen with all your experience of seeing people actually make that step of getting something, pen to paper or getting a book out?
Yeah. Anyone can start a book, but very few people finish a book. So everyone has the capacity to write the book, but not everyone has the discipline to put their bum in a chair and their fingers to the keyboard and type out 60,000 or 80,000 words or whatever. So I think that a lot of people have great ideas for a book and they remain in their head forever because they don't necessarily, they get bored of it. They will not sit in that chair and write out all the chapters. So I think the biggest stumbling block is discipline.
Yeah, and any tips on how to go about improving that discipline muscle, so to speak?
I think you need to understand your bigger why, your bigger reason why you're writing the book. If you're just writing a book because, someone told me it's a good idea for me to write a book, that's probably not going to compel you enough to sit down and write it. But if you, for example, let's say you're a business owner and you want to write a book that's related to your business or your area of expertise, your bigger why might be that your book is actually an integral part of your overall strategic plan to grow your business and market your business. So, in fact, it might be a book that's going to be used as a lead generator to bring you heaps more customers potentially who will then buy a higher price at the back end. So a friend of mine, he writes books and he's a consultant, and he's got a very good why to write his books because he distributes them at conferences, and typically he might distribute, say, 200 books at a conference, or somewhere between 100 and 200 books, and even he doesn't really care even whether he gets paid for them because he knows out of that lot of 200 he will get 100 grand of consulting fees. He's done this for 10 years now, and he just knows that that's the formula, in a sense, in the way he works. So he has a strong why to write a new book every couple of years because that's what it generates for him. So I guess you need to understand your bigger why, and it needs to be a compelling reason for you to actually write that book.
Fantastic. And who are your ideal clients? Who are the people that come to the centre more than others?
Well, we have a variety of different sort of hubs at the centre, if you like, because there are the people who are doing it for work, and there are people who are wanting to improve their writing because the pleasure and hobby reasons. So if it's the pleasure or hobby, it's usually someone between 35 to 50 or between 30 to 50. They've had their kids, but their kids are still growing up, but they're no longer, toddlers. So they have a little bit more time on their hands than when they had to be with their kids 24/7. And they really want to give something back to themselves and rediscover a creativity that they used to have perhaps when they were at school, or that they know they've got all these stories in their head that they want to get on paper. So that's usually the demographic for people who are doing it for pleasure. But then we've got people who are career changers, and they're usually people, say, maybe 35 to 45, who want to earn money as a writer. They want this to be their new career. And they usually come from corporate, and they've decided that they want to do something different, but they do want to earn their full-time income through writing. So there's those people, but there's also people who are business owners who want to write a business book, and they don't want to become writers. They've already got a business, but they do know they want to write a quality book. So we help them by giving them a very clear step-by-step framework on, we know how busy you are because I'm a busy business owner myself. And I know you don't want to learn all the aspects of the craft of writing because that's not your core business. You're actually you're a chiropractor, or you're a lawyer, or whatever. But here's a framework that we can give you in order to effectively and efficiently get the IP out of your head and into a business book.
Fantastic. Excellent. And I will be a customer at some point. I definitely will. I've got a book. I've got several actually, but the dedication piece, it was hard enough getting a podcast out. The book's the next challenge. Through this wonderful business that you've created, and you've seen so many other businesses, what's just one learning you'd like to share with the BLG community on growing your own business?
I think I guess a couple of things. One I mentioned is seek out your mentors or coaches early earlier than me anyway.
Yes.
Never stop learning. I think that's very important. And don't be afraid to end relationships. And I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean that sometimes you could be in a relationship with a supplier that isn't serving you anymore, or a team member who isn't serving you anymore, or or a business coach who isn't serving you anymore. So I guess don't be afraid to end relationships on in an amicable way, in as nice a way as possible, in order to move to the next level. Because sometimes we need to seek out a different mentor or a different supplier that can grow with us.
Great. And what are some of the key challenges that face you at the moment on running your business? Not on the rope side, but on actually running your the Riders Centre.
That is a good question. Some of the key challenges is keeping ahead of digital advances. So technology changes so quickly, and what you can do now, you just could not do 10 years ago. You couldn't even do it 5 years ago, or you certainly couldn't do it as cheaply or as efficiently 2 years ago in some cases. So keeping ahead of what's possible in terms of technological innovation, but also then having the time to figure out, well, should I apply it or not? Because not every bright, shiny technological advance is right for you or right for anyone in some cases. So I think that is one of the biggest challenges, is not only keeping up, but then determining, should it be implemented in your business? And if so, then the challenge is obviously implementing it and maintaining it.
Yeah, and you don't have to give your detailed sources, but what do you read or listen to stay ahead of some of those digital trends?
Gosh, I see. I'm not one of those people, for example, who says, "Oh, I stay away from social media, or I block out everyone except my personal friends from my Facebook feed." I'm not one of those people. I get snippets of information from all over the place. From random bits on Twitter, from watching people's behavior, the way people interact online. I will learn from observation of online behavior, but also societal behavior, just as much as I will from, reading Fast Company or Wired or whatever.
Great, excellent. And the next question is a little more personal, but it's to do with your partner, Peter. So if Peter is listening to this podcast, what would you say as a thank you or a way to express the support that he's giving you whilst you're building the centre?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, he's very supportive, which is great. But I think that the biggest thing has been for years, he's encouraged me to find an interest outside of work. And I understand that intellectually, but I never felt the need to, because I loved my work. Yes. And still love my work. And I didn't care if I was doing it on weekends. I didn't care if I was doing it 10 o'clock at night, because it's something I love. Why deprive me of something that I love? But he's encouraged me to find another interest. And I've dabbled here and there, as I've mentioned. But it's only been quite recently, as I've already mentioned, that I've become interested in art and rope, that I have actually found another interest that will entice me to shut the computer at 7 o'clock or whatever and do something else. And I guess I would thank him for keeping on nagging at me until I actually found that. And of course, he's thrilled.
Excellent. Oh, that's great. That's great. So the next section is around the live section. And, what are some of the key habits that you do on a weekly basis that make you successful, in all walks of life?
I try to get into a routine. It doesn't always work, though. But my aim is to have some kind of routine where I go to the gym this many X number of times per week. I go into the office on these particular days. I have chats with my team on these particular days. Sometimes that gets completely stuffed up because I don't know why, because life happens. Yes. but I think that it really does help to have that structure and to make sure that you do have that in your life so that you at least try to stick to it. And if you go off the rails from time to time, which can happen when you're traveling and that sort of thing, then okay, accept that that's going to happen from time to time, and then come back onto the routine if you can.
Excellent, great. And any particular morning routine or anything you do in the morning to prepare you for a successful day?
Well, it doesn't happen every day, but on maybe 3 times a week, I like to go to my local cafe, and that's where I'll have my tea or, brekkie or whatever. But I will sit there with my notebook and my computer, and I will pretty much plan out the next day or week or, whatever period I'm planning for, and work out who I need to talk to, work out all the things I need to do, try and structure, these are the times that I'm going to do it. And I find that really useful. I find it very grounding, and it helps me feel good for the rest of the day.
Great. And just going back to, your prior life as an accountant, do you still draw on some of those skills to apply to your business today?
Oh, for sure. Like, I do not regret 1 second of my time in accounting, because I learnt so much that was so useful for running a business. Even though the work itself that I did, and I was in auditing, wasn't the most scintillating in the world, I'm still so grateful for my time there, because there's so much that I can apply, in terms of tax, in terms of business structure, in terms of corporate law, that is just so useful and that I take for granted. And sometimes I forget that not everyone has this background, and I feel very fortunate that I've got that grounding.
Excellent. So the next section is around the give section. And is there a cause or a community that you support and you'd love to talk to the BLG listeners about?
I love the organisation called Doggy Rescue, and it's a dog rescue organisation. They've started to do cat rescue now as well, but it started off obviously with dogs. And it's here in Sydney. It's called Monica's Doggy Rescue, and it's at a place called Ingleside in Sydney. And it's a no-kill shelter, and they take dogs from pounds who are on death row. And I just love their work. I love that what they're doing, that they're helping these poor defenseless dogs with, who've been abandoned, and selflessly help them and keep them for the rest of their lives until they find a foster home or an adopted home. Some years ago, I adopted a dog from there. He's passed away now, but he changed my life, and I think rescue dogs can change your life.
Yeah, look, so true. And actually, I just put a post into the BLG community today about, pets at home. So I know I work from home, and, my dog every hour, it'll sort of wander in, it'll sort of see if I'm okay. And at around 12 o'clock, nearly to the second, it'll say, it's time for a walk, and I'll go for a walk. And, I just find it so much company, whereas, versus working in corporate where I had lots and lots of people, I just find a pet is fantastic. So,
life-changing and life-enriching. I cannot rave on enough about how wonderful, how much joy my pets bring me.
Yeah, no, that's great. Completely concur. So the next section is a little more action orientated, and it's just you giving some great advice to the BLG listeners. So the first question is around personal productivity. So what's your number one personal productivity tip?
Eat that frog. Which of course was made famous by Brian Tracy in his book Eat That Frog. And the concept is that if you've got a whole list of things to do the hardest task first, because then you get it out of the way and everything else seems easy, and you feel like you've accomplished this great big thing. And also that hardest task is never usually takes as much time as you think. So definitely, I think when it comes to productivity, do the hardest task first, and that's a great way to set yourself up for success.
Yeah, and do you find that, Valerie, with the book writing as well? You know, you talked about discipline, etc., but do people normally build it up to be far worse than what it actually is?
Yes, until you start writing, and you when you start writing, you actually think, oh, it's going to take me forever to write, I don't know, say 2,000 words. But before you know it, you're at 2,000 words. So I think once you get started on any task, whether it's writing or not, it's almost always not as big as you think. So I think that is definitely the case with writing a book as well. It seems so daunting when you haven't even started writing one word, right?
Yes, true. Brilliant. So the next is around applications. So if you look, you know, on your home screen on your phone or maybe on your browser with extensions, etc., what are some of the key technology and applications you use to run the Writing Centre?
Well, I communicate with my team on Slack. So Slack is definitely an app that I use all the time. I am quite loving Instagram at the moment. So the Instagram app is on my homepage of my phone. I never used to understand Pinterest at all, but now Pinterest is on the home page of my phone because that's where I see lots of pictures of art and rope and weaving.
Yes.
I have the Canon, as in the Canon camera, app on my phone because I have a camera that is Wi-Fi connected to my phone so that I don't have to take out the SD card and download the image. I can just send the image straight to my computer. So I definitely use that app. Of course, I watch Netflix, so that's on my phone. I like Flipboard because Flipboard is kind of a curated, a service that curates different links from websites all over the world in your particular areas of interest. It's like a sophisticated RSS feed in a sense. So I think it's good. I use the flashlight app a lot on my phone, and because I guess I just need to see things in the dark. And another app I like is Trip List. This has saved my life. Well, not my life, but saved me a lot on my travels. So what it is because I travel quite a bit with work, and I used to always land in destinations and go, oh my goodness, I forgot to pack whatever, some really important thing. So then I started using Trip List, and you can put all of your items in there. And every time I travel, I go to Trip List and I make sure I check off all of my items so that I don't have that situation again. So yeah, there's just some that I use.
Fantastic. And look, we'll put links in the show notes to all of those. So some great suggestions there and some quite unique ones that I haven't come across before, which is great. So I don't know how we're going to get you to answer this next question, but your favorite book or podcast. So I'm assuming that's very difficult for you to do, but I don't know if you listen to podcasts, that might be easier than books, but I'll leave it over to you to answer however you fit.
Well, I read so many books because, being with the Writers Centre, I have books coming out of my ears. And while I don't necessarily say it's a favourite book, I do have a favourite author. And so almost all of his books are fantastic. And that is Michael Lewis. Now, Michael Lewis wrote books like Moneyball, which became the movie with Brad Pitt. Yes. Also The Big Short, which became the movie with, Steve Carell and Christian Bale. He also wrote Liar's Poker and The New Thing. So basically, I think he was a banker or an investment banker or something, and decided that he liked writing. So he writes non-fiction books. They're all non-fiction. They're all about particular situations or events. He wrote a book called Boomerang, which is really about the various economies that led to the global financial crisis. And, so essentially he's writing about economics, but he can write about economics and it can be like a page-turning thriller. So I admire him in that he can turn quite dry topics and maybe not dry, and certainly very complex topics into compelling pieces of prose. And so I read his work. Well, the secondary reason that I read his work is that I learned stuff from it, but the primary reason is that I just love the sheer excellence of his writing.
Excellent. Great. We'll put a couple of links to those books in the show notes, and I'm certainly familiar with the movies, but I didn't know that he was the man behind them. So I'll add him to my collection for my next trip. The last question is about just some general advice. You've built a very successful career. You've seen so many people come through the Writers Centre. What's a piece of advice you'd give to a BLG listener that's either, just about to leave and start their own business, or already made that step and they're, really battling to scale their business?
I guess it is a couple of things. I've mentioned already, get your mentors early, but also if you're coming from the corporate world, the small business world is so different. And I've seen so many people come from the corporate world and really struggle with the small business world because there's no stationery cupboard, there's no HR department, there's no IT support, and you kind of have to do everything yourself. Or I've seen them either struggle doing that, or they feel they need to outsource that and pay someone to do it. But sometimes if you're just starting out a business, you don't have the cash flow to pay for someone to do all of those things. So I think it's a matter of changing your mindset, is being really mindful that you need to change your mindset, that you can still do things in a scrappy way, in a sense, where it doesn't cost you a lot of money, but which does require you to learn about certain things, whether that is about the ins and outs of your accounting system, or about CRM software, or about HR laws, or whatever. You actually do need to learn about certain things that you once were able to give to another department. And that's just life as a small business owner. So I encourage a spirit of learning and curiosity in order to really thrive.
Excellent. Once again, some fantastic advice on top of already other advice you've given through this podcast. So where can people find out more about you, Valerie?
Well, you can find out more about the Writers Centre at writerscentre.com.au. If you want to follow my journey on Instagram, feel free to look me up on Instagram, Valerie Khoo, Khoo. But also some people in your community might be interested in writing their own book about their own area of expertise or about their own business or industry or field. And that's something I'm an expert in as well. I've mentored many business books to publication. And I love it because it's usually people writing about something they're extremely passionate about. And so they can find out more about our course in that, which gives them that step-by-step framework at buildyourbook.com.au. So that's buildyourbook.com.au.
Excellent. Once again, those details will be in the show notes. So, Valerie, I'd love to thank you for sharing your fantastic journey today. I would never have thought I'd learn a little bit about rope, a little more about rope through our conversation. But look, you just got such an engaging manner. This is the first time we've spoken, but I just really love the passion that you have and the work that you do. So, I really appreciate you coming on the show, sharing your wisdom with the Build, Live, Give community, and we wish you every success in the future. Excellent.
Thank you.
Thanks, Valerie.
Thank you for listening to the Build, Live, Give show. If you found this show helpful, please share it with others so we can build businesses, live great lives, and give back to the community. If you would like to join the BLG community, go to our website, www.buildlivegive.com. Until next time, thanks for listening.